All right, now we're all set to record and kick off this International Coaching Week event here. And we are thrilled to have James Garrett back with us. And given it's the lunch hour, we'll probably have a few more people trickling in here, but we want to kick things off and make sure he has plenty of time to cover all of his rich content here. So I will turn it over to you, James.
Great. Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Good to see you. Welcome to International Coaching Week. There's a lot to celebrate, right? It's good. Like, being a coach is such a great profession. I just, as I was just reflecting on this, actually, just a little bit earlier today with another coach, I hope you feel the same, right? We're very lucky, very blessed to be able to do what we do, and grateful that you are spending a little time with me today. And I hope you walk away from today's time having sort of thinking outside the box a little bit about what it means to rewire our fear response. So this is the main purpose of today, is to look fear squarely in the face and get better at the internal management of fear and anxiety, as opposed to what we usually do, which is let them manage us. So we're gonna just jump right into the presentation. Can everybody see that okay? The screen? Okay, perfect. And there will be a fair amount, just so you're aware. Here, let's switch back to my nicer audio here. There will be a fair amount of videos on this, because a lot of these are things that I've done, micro experiments in my own life to try to overcome fear, or to do things deliberately that scared me, quite literally. I know that sounds like some kind of bad dream or something, or sadistic impulse, but it's not. It really is an attempt to overcome fear, right? Feel the fear and do it anyway. It's a very difficult thing to do, but it ends up being one of the keys to living the kind of life we want to live. And so if you can learn this one skill and really master fear and anxiety, you really can do it yourself or help clients really achieve the things that they really want. But usually it's fear that stands between them and what they really want. So I want to start out with a video. And if you can give me like a thumbs up if you can hear the video, I'm just gonna flip here. Should just be some music. No music. No music. Hang tight.
Video's right, coming through, just no sound. We get to roll with our threat response as we work with technology. That's exactly right. Isn't that the role of technology these days? It keeps us humble and agile.
Exactly.
On camera, right?
That's right. There's no backstage. I'm going to. I know this works really well without the fancy mic. I think the fancy mic is not being so fancy, incidentally. So you can hear me now, right? Okay. Let me just flip back to this and. Okay. Music. You got music?
It looks like
James,
you're talking,
we
James,
can't hear you.
but we're not hearing sound. There you go. Now I heard a little sound.
How about that? Is that working? Is that
Now I can hear you.
Fantastic.
clear? Okay. I was trying to share that this isn't like something that I love to do. Quite the opposite. I knew I was pushing the envelope. I knew I was pushing a boundary. I knew I probably would get in trouble. I have this odd fear of getting in trouble, and fear is learned. Most fears are learned. 99% of them are learned. The only innate fears scientists think we have are the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. With some debate about spiders and snakes, I tend to fall on the yeah, those are definitely innate side. But that's it. For sure, the scientific consensus is fear isn't falling, or fear of falling and loud noises. That's what babies seem to come hardwired in the world with. Everything else tends to, we think, be learned. So the fear of getting in trouble, obviously learned. And again, unpacking my own sort of life, I have a pretty good sense of maybe where that came from. But the problem is it doesn't go away on its own. In other words, I can avoid getting in trouble as much as I want. The avoiding getting in trouble is the thing that's going to keep the fear alive. I know this sounds kind of odd, right? Because it's sort of like, well, what are you gonna do? Just go get in trouble all the time? Well, I mean, that's a unique one maybe, but the point is, if we avoid the fears that we do fear, they tend to grow over time, actually. They certainly maintain, but they often grow. So the only way for James uniquely to get over this unique fear of getting in trouble is to actually get in trouble. And then sit with the emotions and watch the natural anxiety peak, ebb and flow of that, and let it resolve on its own, and realize it's not going to undo me. I'm not going to die. I'm not, it's like, typically you can apologize when you get in trouble, ask for forgiveness, not permission, that kind of thing, right? There's usually a way out, if it's benign enough. But the point is, like, I need to practice this. If I want to overcome this fear, if I don't want it to live inside me, to be active and easily activatable, I should mention, I've got to face it. I've got to work through it. I've got to plan on doing things that activate that fear and then get better at managing the internal emotion that comes up in me when that thing happens. The more I avoid it, the stronger it gets. This is the most difficult and counterintuitive aspect of fear and anxiety. It's also the thing that tends to keep people stuck. All right, so obviously a very natural question comes out, which is, what do you fear? So I just want to sit with this question. What do you fear? Any thoughts? Anything that comes up for you? Feel free to put in the chat, or because it's such a intimate group, you could also just unmute yourself. What kind of like does that thing for you? It seems scary to you. Thoughts on this?
Yeah, this is Paula.
Hi, Paula.
Hey, James. Getting in trouble is one of the things that I avoid as well. It's always, I can't remember a time when I didn't worry about that. And typically I'm designing my actions and my days not to get in trouble. One of the other things is fear of speaking in public. But interestingly enough, to your point, putting myself in those situations has made it a lot more manageable. Still makes me anxious, but I don't actively avoid it anymore. I don't volunteer, but I will step up when I need to.
Good, good. It's beautifully articulated, Paula. Good. Anybody else have anything
Hello.
they want to share? Yeah, please.
Yeah, this is Hideo speaking. Yeah, my fear is to not to do anything to meet others' expectation or judgment from others. That's my fear. Yeah. For example, yeah, I'm talking, I'm speaking in English, but it is not my mother language, so it's always fair to speak out in English. Yeah.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, because we're worried we're gonna look unintelligent or stupid, or we're gonna say something that's wrong. You know, I've lived in foreign countries for 8 years of my life, so I know this fear well. And it's real, you know, and people are not that nice when you don't speak clearly, or, you know, sometimes people aren't terribly nice about it. Good. You know, we'll get into fear of judgment, fear of looking stupid in just a bit. So I'm glad you brought that up, Hideo. Anybody else? What comes up in fears? And I want to just make sure I'm okay. Aurora says I'm fearing being in the passenger seat with my daughter driving right now, with her driving through Denver traffic. Yeah, that's a pretty understandable fear. My kids aren't teens yet, but they will be soon. Or at least the one of them will, within a 5-year window, I suppose. But yeah, there's existential fears, right? Fears for our physical safety. And those fears are very, very natural. And incidentally, teenagers have less of them than adults do. So she's probably not scared, just so I don't know if that helps or not. Probably doesn't, Aurora. You kind of want her to be more afraid. I think that'll make it feel safer somehow. But yeah, no, think of all of the, yeah, that's what's going on, exactly. Yeah, fears are amazingly complex things. And again, they're very individualized. In other words, they have to do with our unique histories. Because most fears are learned, there's a story there. There's always a story that accompanies that learned fear. Because we've been through some kind of an experience that's helped us learn that, hey, watch out for this one. You know, once bitten, twice shy. Like, better be extra careful next time, right? And fear overreacts in that way. It, for good reason, because our brains are trying to keep us safe. But again, in a modern context, this is often happening around things that are not. It's often happening in terms of their social fears, right? Social judgment, being judged by other people, or career fears. I don't dare do this because I'm worried about the risks it entails and other things. But a lot of these are not for our physical safety, they're for our psychological safety. So we stay very nicely comfortable in our comfort zones and live lives that are fairly safe. And long for the inner strength to reach out and fulfill that life out there, that the thing that stands between us and that life we want for ourselves or our loved ones or our clients is fear. So we got a handful of videos to get through here. So fear is the problem with fear. Again, as I mentioned earlier, is that it freezes us. It tends to keep us in place. The reason is quite biological in nature. Joseph Ledoux, one of the most famous researchers on the amygdala, professor at NYU, very famous scientist. He said, we freeze first. When we experience fear, we freeze first, we flee if we can, and we fight if we must. We freeze first, flee if we can, and fight if we must. So we have this notion about fight or flight as if fighting's our first instinct. No, it's not. It's too dangerous. Freezing is our first instinct. Freezing, again, think about this out in nature. If you freeze, if the thing that attracts attention is movement. So if you're frozen solid, you can become essentially invisible, right? And so in that context, it makes perfect sense why we would freeze when we're afraid. It is more likely that we're not going to get hurt or die, especially if because we didn't used to live in lovely houses that were fortified and that sort of thing, with walls and that other animals couldn't get through. We're part of nature, right? And we used to have a much more rough existence because of that. So this is deeply wired in our biology. But that's a problem again in a modern context, because most things we're trying to achieve in our lives, the fear or anxiety response keeps us stuck and not achieving those goals. So the upgraded or sort of next step or growth opportunity, the invitation for growth when it comes to fear, is to act instead. If I feel scared, that's a signal that this thing matters to me, and I'm going to take action, one action toward that goal. I'm nervous. So Paula brought up this lovely example of speaking in public, and Hideo actually brought it up in relation to a second language. Great. So every time you feel that innate nervousness, which we all feel, great. It's if I feel scared, then I do the thing I'm scared to do, and that action over time will create a new learned response. And that new learned response is, yeah, I do feel a little anxious / nervous, but as Paula said earlier, I can manage it better. It somehow feels doable, manageable. I got this. I'm still a little bit scared. Doesn't mean that it disappears completely, but I'm not freezing, I'm acting. I'm taking action. All right, I want to share this fear of failure example, because I think this is a fun one. We got another video here.
I've never surfed before in my life, and the reason that I haven't ever surfed is because it kind of scares me.
This is pitiful, you guys.
Just finished my first time surfing. Here's what I learned. One is that surfing is way harder than it looks. I also learned that it's always easier if you're scared of something to start on the smaller waves. It's not that scary if it's little, right? Like little incremental things. It was tons of fun. I actually did it, right? I actually did it. And it was super fun. I'm so glad I did. And I'm going to do it next time we go to the beach.
All right. Anybody been surfing, by the way? So it still scares me. I've only done it twice now, but just to show you like how this works, like we now live in New Hampshire, which is, you wouldn't think is a surfing destination, but there is surfing on Northampton Beach in New Hampshire. And I'm planning on going surfing again with my daughter. I want to teach her how to surf. I want trying to learn myself as well. But the point is, like, it's still in front of me. I still have this like thing, right? With fear and water. And we had, again, learned experience. We had this really awful water experience when I was on the Snake River when I was in 6th grade, where my whole family almost died. And, you know, it wasn't a light memory. It was a fairly traumatic memory. And, but you know, rushing white water is it's a thing, you know, it's a thing that scares me. But it happens incrementally in the way that you saw me failing, flopping on my face. I mean, I looked pathetic, didn't I? I mean, it was like almost embarrassing how bad I was. And yet that is the cost, or that's the price, right? That we have to pay to get good at something. You know, as Hideo brought up with language, foreign language, such a good example because it maps almost perfectly. We effectively have to look stupid over and over and over again, asking questions like, how do you say that? I don't understand. Can you repeat that? Can you slow down a little bit? I'm saying it like this. And we probably sound like all like, you know, not clear. And yet that's the cost. That's the price of getting more skilled at something. That holding that negative emotion inside of us while we ask for help and encouragement as we get better at something is the only way we're actually going to get better. Courage is not the fear of, I love this quote by Susan Davis. She said, courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is fear walking. So again, utilizing what Paula brought up earlier, it isn't necessarily that the fear magically disappears. I wish it did, and it does subside. And I think there are occasions when it does disappear completely, but more often than not, it just decreases in intensity. But often to get there, we have to do this over and over and over again. We have to take the action while feeling that anxiety, that upset, that really awful feeling. We take action instead of freezing. That's the whole deal with courage. I wish that courage were easier than that. It's something that, looking back in my own life, I wish I had more of over time. And it's something that, it's one of the things I'm actively working on, which is why you see me doing all these crazy experiments. All right, I want to talk about another fear of rejection, because again, Hideo brought this up beautifully at the beginning. We all have this fear. Anybody relate to this? Being rejected, being like kicked out of the group, being made fun of, being the laughing stock. Social fears are intense. They're knit into the fabric of who we are as humans. And rejection is probably the big one, you know? So we're gonna do another video because I tried to face this one square on too. Still working on this one, but this is a video I tried.
Rejection challenge number 5. I'm here at In-N-Out Burger and I've got my food. I'm eating outside. Looks amazing, right? And I got this idea from Jia Jiang's book, Rejection Proof. So again, if anybody's liking these videos, be sure to pick up Jia Jiang's book because it's just super inspirational. Okay, it's called Rejection Proof. And again, as a reminder to everybody watching, for why I'm doing this, I'm doing it deliberately to practice being rejected, purely to be with the emotions of what that feels like and to be able to override those or kind of feel the fear and do it anyways. So I'm gonna eat my burger and then I'm gonna ask for a burger refill. I know they do soda refills for free. And I got this idea from Jia Jiang, but I want to ask if they'll do a burger refill. I assume they'll say no, but we'll see. I'm going back in. Good man, how you doing? You guys do refills? What was that? You guys do refills? Refills? We do refills, yeah. Can I get a burger refill? A burger, what does that mean? You guys do burger refills? Like a new burger after you already get a burger? Yeah. So you would have to purchase a separate burger. Separate burger? Yeah. Okay, so just on the drinks? What was that? Just on the drinks? Yeah, just on the drinks. Yep. Okay. All right. Okay, I'll pass them though. Okay. All right, thanks, man. All right, thank you. All right, appreciate it. Yeah, I'm gonna have to purchase a separate burger for that one. That was so interesting because before I went in, the longer I thought about it, the longer I sat here eating my burger, anticipating what was coming next, the more kind of sickening of a feeling I started getting, oh God, this is such a bad idea. Why am I doing this? And eventually I just had to cut it off and be all right, I'm just locking in. It was okay. It was not that bad. Again, I felt a little bit like maybe stupid or something. But he was nice about it, right? It was okay. It was okay.
All right. I know the volume probably isn't perfect. I've tried 1,000 different ways for the audio to plug directly into Zoom, and it always has to go through the speakers of the computers and then into Zoom for some reason. So I hope you could hear the gist. Yes? Can you hear the gist? Yeah. Yeah, talk about this isn't hard to do, breaking social norms. It's shockingly easy because norms are what define culture, right? And culture is everywhere. It's always invisible. You know it when you defy it or do something different than it, and you feel it. You feel awkward doing something that's unusual, that's out of the box, that's different. Right? I mean, we use that word out of the box and other phrases like this to describe what we mean by the difficulty of breaking the status quo, right? The norms and taboos set up around here are about what's socially acceptable, responsible, etc. And all of those norms and taboos have everything to do with how things are now. They don't have anything to do with how they could be, or maybe should be, or maybe we want them to be. In other words, if you've got a good thing going in your coaching practice and you want to start a new course or some new revenue stream or something else, all of the weight and gravity around you, including colleagues and other well-meaning family members, they're going to encourage you to not do anything I mean, not always, but the gravity trends toward avoiding things that are not normal, not part of the norm, right? That aren't already happening. And the reason is because it's scary. It's just unknown, what will happen, right? So again, I didn't know what would happen if I asked for a burger refill. And it's kind of obviously sort of a silly example. It's not a sort of something we do every day. But the point is, it's just straight up the emotion of asking for something that I may or may not get, but probably won't, and feeling what that feels like to be rejected. That's the exercise. That's the emotional muscle I'm trying to build, is doing the hard thing and trying to sit with the life cycle of that emotion and realize that the anxiety chills out on its own. I don't have to go running for the anxiety to chill out. I can square my shoulders, stare it straight in the face, and eventually it dissipates. And then as I do more of those things, and as all of us do more of those things, we start realizing, maybe I can do harder things. Maybe it isn't as scary as I was making it out to be in my mind. Maybe I can take that risk for my business. And maybe I can make it a calculated risk. So it's a thoughtful risk rather than a, crazy risk. But the point is, of course, with our clients, this is always coming up, right? With clients, this is always coming up. Just we're in a position to encourage them to get out of their comfort zone and face their fears. And again, one of the best ways I think we as coaches can do that is obviously facing our own. All right. Just love the idea around courage. Again, I wish courage was something that was easier. I really do, because it sucks that it's so hard. But courage isn't something you're born with. It's something you build. It's just like a muscle. It's just something you grow. And the courage gym to build that muscle is facing those fears and doing the scary thing when given the choice. With lifting weights, it's like lifting those dumbbells, and getting that bicep pumping, as opposed to letting the dumbbell sit on the ground. It's like doing the harder thing instead of the easier thing. With courage, it's the exact same thing. It's just leaning into that hard conversation with your significant other instead of avoiding it. Like that's where it comes from. It's just doing that over and over and over again. And eventually the courage muscle starts to build, and you realize that emotion is not going to undo you, that you can move through the action of leaning into that scary thing and simultaneously successfully manage and regulate that negative emotion that it naturally evokes. All right. Oops, apologize for that. All right, so again, the main gist here, or the main idea here, is that your brain is like a muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger it gets. This is obviously the science of neuroplasticity. I'm just going to show you one quick accelerated timeline of neuroplasticity, so you can see the actual growth of new neurons, or the dendritic branches actually of neurons, the branches between neurons. So neurons are constantly changing, adapting, moving. The brain is not a stagnant thing. Change is our neurological birthright. We're built for change. We are change. It's just a question of whether we're directing that change, if we're in the driver's seat of that change. So again, does the fear have us, or do we have the fear? Does the feeling of anxiety determine our actions and make us run for the hills? Which again, I've had plenty of moments in my life where that's been me. Yeah, I'm out of here. See ya. This is really true with interpersonal situations, right? Where it's like, oh, difficult conversation. I'd just rather avoid that one. Can we just pretend like that never happened? And we'll just be all nicey nice and paper over that and make that friendly again. And do we have to address it head on? Yeah, usually. It's usually the only way negative emotion resolves, is to talk about what happened, apologize, take responsibility for your role in it. Right? That's scary crap. It's hard. But if I run, I'm reinforcing circuits that tell me if I feel fear, I should avoid. I'm literally like, I'm allowing my intrinsic native biology programs to run me. If I feel fear, I freeze or I hightail it out of there. But I have this unique capacity, we all do as humans, to push pause on that process, to push pause on that program and be like, do I want to run? Is that going to be best for me in the long term? Am I just reinforcing a pattern here that seems to repeat itself? I'm talking specifically about relationships right now. And can I modify that pattern? Can I hang with the new difficult emotion? Can I lean into the difficult conversation and say, I'm really sorry for what happened. I shouldn't have done that. Instead of wanting to avoid that. That's a different response. It's not like freeze, flee, right? And it's not fight either. It's actually reconciling. It's actually connecting. It's actually healing. And that can be the response we have when we feel uncomfortable. But we have to work at it in order to get that muscle strong enough that that becomes a default response. It's a 2.0 response. It's an 1.0 is please flee or fight. 2.0 is like, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. And I think I messed up. Help me understand what happened. Right? Just leaning into it. It's a different, it's a more intentional response. And again, this isn't just for us, obviously, as coaches. This is I think, one of the core skills we're always working on with our clients to help them realize they have that capacity to build that courage muscle, but more importantly, to coach them and scaffold them through these specific experiences in their unique lives where they're building that muscle with their loved ones, with the business that they run, with the whatever situations they have in their lives. All right. All right. It wouldn't be, I mean, fear of rejection, there's lots of flavors of it, right? This is one of those flavors. And we brought this up already because of Hideo's comment about languages. But fear of looking stupid, it's a really awful fear. So we're going to watch another video.
All right, for my rejection challenge today, I'm going to try to drive my car backwards through a car wash and see what they say. All right, I am here. Hi there, how are you? Good, how are you doing? I just want an exterior wash.
Just the outside.
Just the outside.
Just the outside. Okay.
And do you mind, is there a way I can put it in reverse and go in backwards?
Sorry, what?
Is there a way I can go in backwards?
Going backwards?
Yeah, like I think that my car tends to get cleaner if I go in reverse and I put it in neutral. Is that okay?
I'm not too sure. I would ask whoever's up there. They know more about the operations of that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thanks. Man, how you doing? Is it possible to go in reverse? Like to take the car in backwards and just put it in neutral? Seems like my car gets a little bit cleaner.
Yeah, if you want.
You guide me? Okay, cool, man. It worked. All right, here we go. Going in backwards. The first time I haven't been rejected. I'm getting lots of weird looks from the people in front of me. Success with the people in front of me are looking at me like I'm insane. Check it out. Like, these people are like, this dude is so crazy. We did it. First time I wasn't rejected. I think that's worth celebrating. This is the weirdest thing I've ever done. It's so weird how little you have to do to break a social norm. I mean, going in backwards, it's like, what's the big deal, right? But I feel lots of eyeballs on me being like, dude, you're crazy. Who are you? What are you doing? One thing that's interesting is I gave them a reason for wanting to go in backwards, which was I thought it maybe made my car a little bit cleaner. So I don't know if that made a difference. It's possible. First time, they didn't say no. They said yes. I think that's a win.
All right. All right. I know these little experiments seem a little nutso and a little outside the typical kind of, what would you say, like life, what we would normally do. And I certainly don't expect you to do that. But you understand the point, right? Which is to walk into uncomfortable situations deliberately. Again, doesn't have to be this sort of norm-breaking variety. It can be any variety. Again, like I mentioned, a lot of these happen all the time in our relationships. I just had one this morning. with the members of I'm putting together a little bit of a team that's helping me in my company, and we're trying to discuss. I was trying to open up, and they were pushing to open up a more honest, candid, and thoughtful conversation, which again was just slightly more difficult to have, right? And I'm like, all in, let's do it, right? But again, it obviously like was not the easy conversation to have. It was the slightly harder conversation to have. But of course, more likely than not is going to lead to better outcomes, right? Typically, this ends up being the case as long as everybody has the same intentions going into the harder conversation, where it's not about, you know, one-upping people and blah, 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 that kind of stuff that can happen in teams, in a workplace or something, but everybody has the same goals and same intentions, and everybody's working toward achieving those. Typically speaking, the more candid, more difficult conversations where honesty is prioritized, and therefore typically discomfort has to be tolerated by everyone, right? We're going to get to better solutions. We're not going to be subject to things like confirmation bias. We're not going to be, we're not going to make decision-making errors where we have massive blind spots, but we can't see them because we're not willing to have hard conversations, right? These are the kinds of outcomes that naturally emerge from that capacity to sit with difficult emotions. We just get better, and we get better outcomes as a result, in whatever the context is. All right. I want to ask this question for each of you, right? Or I want you to sit with this question. What are you most afraid of? Right? This is obviously a somewhat personal question, but I just want you to sit with it. What are you most afraid of? The word most is deliberate, because oftentimes we have a biggie. Not always, but often we have like one that's like, oh, that's a doozy, right? And these tend to have to do with our self-narratives. Oh, I worry that I'm blank, right? An imposter. I worry that I'm, or I am, typically is how we phrase these, unlovable, right? We see this all the time in ourselves and in our clients. It's a universal phenomenon that we tend to have some self-narrative that is less than flattering about ourselves, and we don't want to share that with anybody. We want to keep that hidden because it's scary. If they found out, well, they might not be a friend anymore. They might reject us, right? Let me tell you about one of mine. There was a time in my life where I discovered something about myself that's really sort of frightened me. It has to do with a story about this envelope. I was a young teenager. I think it was around 7th-ish grade, so about 13 years old-ish, give or take. I can't remember the exact age I was, but it was in that very early teenage years. I would mow lawns and try to make a little bit of money. And my brother had wrapped me into his, I'm just going to call it a pyramid scheme. Well, it wasn't a pyramid scheme, but it was sort of, it was BMG in Columbia House. I don't know if anybody remembers this one, like cassette tapes were like, sorry, this seems so long ago. in the early 90s, late 80s, it was really early 90s, I guess. Columbia House and BMG were doing these like massive mail campaigns where you could buy one tape and get 8 free for BMG. That was the offer. And then there was like a monthly subscription model where they would send you one every month. It was something like this. And Columbia House, I think you could buy like 12 for a penny. It was just something that just made your mind, as a young teenager, it was like blow your mind worthy, right? And if you sign somebody else up, I think you get for free or something like this. So my brother signs me up, right? And I'm like, I'm like this young teenage kid. I don't know what I'm doing, but I know I have this financial obligation now to some people in Wisconsin or some random state. I don't have any idea where it is on a map. And I and I have to write a check out to them every so often, or else, I was a pretty conscientious kid. So I didn't want to not fulfill my obligation, or I don't know. I just was like, I owed money to somebody, right? So I'd mow the lawns, and then I would give the cash to my dad, and then my dad would write a check, because obviously I didn't have a checking account. And then I would put the check in the envelope to send to BMG. Well, I'm in my kitchen in my parents' house. I address, the return address, the BMG address. I put the check in, seal it, and I'm about to ride my bike to the grocery store where there's a mail drop, and I have this gnawing, awful feeling that I actually did what I just did. I was like, had this really deep gnawing sensation that I didn't put the check in the envelope. I was like, I'm all alone, nobody's around. I'm like, well, maybe you didn't. Maybe you should check and just make sure. So I did. I opened it up. Oh, sure enough, check's still there. Well, I just destroyed the envelope, so I got to do another one. Just address it, all that stuff, put a stamp on it, lick it, seal it. I'm about to walk out the door, same feeling. I'm like, what is that? I don't know, but it felt very real. It wasn't like I was imagining the feeling. The feeling was very gripping. It really had me. So I was like, I know this sounds weird. And again, self-aware enough to know that like, this is weird, but it still felt very powerful. So I opened it back up, the second envelope, and okay, there it is. Okay, it didn't fall out. All right, good. All right, so this goes on a number of times. And eventually I'm just like, well, I just got to go drop it, even though I feel weird. So I did. And I put it in the envelope, and I checked, obviously, when I dropped it too, to make sure it didn't drop anywhere in the envelope. And I'm like, that's something nobody needs to know about me. I think I'm going to hide that one. So I did for many, 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 many years, many decades. So of course, for anybody who's catching what's going on, these are the early burgeoning signs of a tendency toward OCD, right? OCD is an anxiety-driven disorder, and leaves you with a feeling of chronic doubt. Like you didn't just do what you just did. That's the hallmark of OCD. It's a really awful brain trick. But I was definitely sure that nobody was going to find out about it. So what I did is I hid it. And when you hide things, you tend to feel a particular emotion about them. You feel embarrassed, feel shamed, feel like, if anybody finds out, I'm definitely getting kicked out. Right? I had 2 older brothers. I was the third of like 3 boys within 3.5 years of each other. I was the little guy, And there were a lot more that came after me too. It was quite a big family. But like growing up, it was like 2 big brothers and then me trying to like tag along, right? So like, I definitely wasn't gonna let them know. Be like a little punching bag, right? So I just hit it, and I got really good at it, but it just grew. Both the problem and the shame and embarrassment around the problem, right? The narrative that started to come around was, I'm defective. Oh, there's something wrong with me. I'm broken. I'm damaged goods. I'm no good. I'm unlovable. I'm defective. This was actually the words that landed in my little teenage, little heart. And I internalized that narrative like it was the truth. Like it was the truth. Right? Narratives aren't, especially self-narratives, tend to not be these things that we, casually relate to. We identify with them as though they're true about us because they feel viscerally true. And then the behavior is like, avoid, hide, avoid, hide. Definitely nobody's knowing about this. That's it. That's the trifecta of shame. Feeling is shame. Narrative is some version of I'm defective, and the behavior is hiding. Whenever we have shame, that's the 3 things that come with it. It's a really nasty package, right? It's a really nasty package. Shame's brutal. It's a very destructive emotion. It's very toxic, right? Brene Brown's done a lot of beautiful work on this. But the point is, we all have something, right? So what is the thing you're most afraid of? Now, again, it's going to apply to you and your unique history and your life history. And again, think of your clients. What is the thing that holds them back? It's going to be knit into the fabric of their unique history and their unique story. But because the brain, and again, this is slightly off presentation here, but because we're a small group, I feel like I can share it. The brain has these two powerful motivational mechanisms, or I should say ways of processing information. One is confirmation bias. So once my brain landed on that narrative, I'm defective, guess what it started doing in my life? Going around looking for evidence for why I was defective, not if. My brain wasn't actually asking the question, is this just like something I made up? No. Brains are not interested in truth. They're interested in being right. So the brain goes around looking for all this information, confirming information for why what it started to believe early on was in fact true, not if it was true, right? And then at that point, brain's going to have all this evidence, juicy evidence to prove the truthiness of that damn narrative. You know what I'm saying? And there's so much evidence at this point because your brain's literally had a filter on it, looking only for that one thing its entire life. Brains are tricky beasts sometimes. They do weird things sometimes. This is one of them. The other thing, the other way of processing information that's problematic about the brain is the negativity bias, right? And I should have shared that in reverse, because the reason it lands on I'm defective is because it's drawn toward negative information. It believes negative information more than positive information. Takes it literally as more truthful. So when you hear something that's negative, purely because it's negative, it's going to believe it more because it sounds more like the truth. Because it's negative, not because it's actually more true, but simply because it's has a negative valence, a negative tag associated with it. By the way, this is why most news is negative. Right? We're drawn to, we're like flies, like a moth to the flame. We're like drawn toward the negative because brains are primarily concerned with keeping us safe. So if the brain can keep us safe by having an overemphasis on negative information, it's worth the cost, even if the price is our happiness. Try that one on for size. It's brutal. Brains have a certain agenda, right? And the agenda is to keep us alive. Thank goodness for that. But it comes with some pretty steep costs along the way. And two of these are that, right? Negativity bias and confirmation bias. Well, this is how this happens in a self-narrative. And the question becomes, how does fear play into this? And the way fear plays into this is it freezes us and makes us want to avoid the very thing if we want to heal, that we need to face. The very thing we need to do, just take action to actually give light to the story, to tell the story, in Brene Brown words, to shine a light on the thing we feel ashamed about. It's the only way that the emotion evaporates and starts to heal over time. By the way, just to be clear, 3 years ago, I couldn't say what I'm saying. I couldn't even, there's no way I could share. You can see how much easier it is for me now. I guess it's hard because you couldn't compare me back then. But you could, I have a few things you could, when I first started being more open about the story, this side of myself. But the point is, like, the muscle, the emotion has lifted, right? It actually goes away when you open up about it and are honest and candid about it and face the thing you're actually afraid of. And when we're not, it just thrives, it just grows inside of us. like this huge plant that like, or maybe I should say weed, it's huge weed inside of us that we don't want anybody to see. All right. What are you most afraid of? I know this is a very introspective question. And again, I don't necessarily, this is a take it home and sit with it kind of question, right? This isn't like a casual workshopping question. It's like a take it home and sit with it question. However, it's also a coaching question, right? What is that person most afraid of? And how do we create a space in which they feel safe and seen enough to share, to open up, to heal from that negative life experience or narrative or whatever that they have inside of them that lives actively inside of them? Here's a more fun question. What's your courage habit? Right? What's the thing you want to do instead of retreating? What do you want to do to lean into the fear? So if you can identify the thing that frightens you or scares you, you know, again, imposter syndrome that came up earlier. I brought that up earlier. We can bring that back here, which is just to say, okay, if I'm nervous about something, like if this feels above my head in terms of what I'm not able to grasp the complexity or whatever it is I'm leaning into, sign me up. I don't know what I'm doing, but I know I need to like embrace opportunities like that. So the courage habit would be, if it feels like I'm out of my depth, then that's a yes. That's a green light. That's okay, yeah, no, I walk into those situations. I walk into those opportunities because that's practicing my courage muscle. What's the if then plan? If I feel blank, then I will blank. If I feel nervous, if I feel scared, if I feel anxious, whatever word resonates most, then I'll take one step toward doing that hard thing, or I will say yes instead of no, or whatever it is. But what is the thing that naturally over and over and over again you will do to build that courage muscle so that over time it becomes strong? It becomes like your courage six-pack. I mean, you could think of this a lot of different ways, but you know, who doesn't want a courage six-pack, you know? You know, a courage washboard. I mean, that'd be amazing, right? I mean, it's perfect. I mean, that'd be amazing, right? You can think of it like little, like a six-pack in your prefrontal cortex. It's perfect. There it is, right there. My courage six-pack. You'll never forget that idea. But in all honesty, that's actually what happens in the brain. The parts of the brain that are intentional, deliberate, that override the fear response, most of them rely behind your forehead, can overwhelm, put the brakes on the amygdala, there are two of them, and say, hey guys, just chill out for a minute. I think I have a bigger goal here. And it's not to retreat, it's not to run away, it's not to avoid, it's to face. And to do it anyway, feel the fear and do it anyway. That's what I'm trying to build right now. So thank you for your contribution to the conversation. But I think we're going to choose the harder path this time. And I think we're going to do this more often than you both will feel comfortable with. But that's the courage habit I'm working on, right? Courage six-pack. It's coming, right? It's coming. I mean, there might be a little layer of, you know, muffin top on top of that six-pack, but it's coming. It's coming. It's underneath. It just needs a little exercise, right? We all get a little flabby. I mean, come on. We're all like in our 40s or so, 50s here. I don't know how old everybody is. I'm in my 40s. But, you know, we get muffin tops and stuff like that. But like, you know, maybe we just have a little courage muffin top. We just need to get back to the CrossFit gym, the courage CrossFit gym, right? and do the thing that scares us over and over and over. And that's the thing that will actually help us embody the emotion of courage, the actions of courage, the things that courage looks like, which is feeling the fear and doing it anyway. All right, if then, like I said, this is the formula. If I feel blank, if I feel scared, then I'll do it anyway. Right, this comes straight from Peter Gollwitzer's research at NYU. If you frame it in this sentence, the likelihood of actually following through on that new courage habit goes from 33% likelihood to 75% likelihood. So you'll 2.5 times the likelihood that you'll actually do the new courage habit if you structure it in this format. If I feel fear, then I'll take action anyway. If then statements, they're critical in terms of moving the needle on a behavior change process. All right.
Wow! Oh my gosh, that was amazing! Adjust your cap. Oh my gosh, that was incredible!
All right. I had to end with that video because, by the way, wasn't that an awesome hat I had on? It gets scary. That's the first and only time I've done skydiving. I don't know if my wife would let me go more than once. But I felt total terror before when he opened the door. Going up on the plane ride, it was like fairly mellow inside. I mean, I was nervous. I had like a baseline anxiety, but I was like, oh, this feels like a normal airplane ride. I know what airplanes feel like. All good. Then he opens the latch like the, and my heart's like, boom, 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 boom. My palms are all sweaty. I'm like, by the way, my wife was 7 months pregnant when I did this. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is so dumb. What am I doing? This is bad. This is bad. I'm an irresponsible human for doing this. I don't know why I'm doing this. This is so, what are we doing here? Why are we doing this? I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, the mental chatter was out of control, right? And then we jump. So I'm literally like, this is going to be the worst experience of my life. It's going to feel awful. Then we jump and we hit that squirrel position. It was a little chaotic, as you saw in the tumble in the beginning. We hit squirrel, which is like the, flying squirrel position. All the fear left me. It was so incredible. It felt like, I almost can't even explain it. It was like, I didn't feel that vertigo feeling you have at a roller coaster, that really awful, up and down feeling. None of it. It felt like I was flying. It felt like I could kind of steer. I was like a bird and I had no fear. I didn't expect that. I expected it to feel like vertigo, like that awful sensation when you're on a roller coaster, right? No, it just felt like bliss. And for about 24 hours after I did it, I was elated. I had this complete shift in my neurochemistry where I was like, it was like I was a different person for 24 hours. It was amazing, right? It's this lovely quote by Joseph Campbell. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek, which is why I asked what you're most afraid of. For me, it was that narrative, I'm defective, and there was something genuinely wrong with me. That was it. So what is it for you? And what lies in that cave? What opportunity, what growth, what power are there for the taking if you're willing to walk into that cave? Or if you're willing, or a client is willing, if you're willing to journey there together, right? I hate that this quote is true, by the way. I wish it weren't true. I'm not a fan of this stuff. I actually think of myself sometimes as like a wimp, because I'm like, yeah, I don't have like natural courage just flowing from my fingertips. I'm like, no, I got to work hard at this stuff. I'm like, it's like I said, I'm the guy who's like, did we mess up? Are we going to get in trouble for that? No, like that's me. Like I'm not like naturally courageous. I don't like this stuff. But I've come to the unsettling but true and very powerful psychological realization that Joseph Campbell is right. That growth only happens in our discomfort zone. And the more willing we are to enter that place of discomfort, the more likely we are to be on a growth path. And as we do that over and over and over again, and as we invite and open up a space for others to do the same, our coaching practice will become much, much more powerful. All right, questions?
I love that concept of leaning into the fear and how that's what disarms the fear. Your skydiving story of how up until the moment of the chipmunk pose, there's all the mental chatter, but then it totally shifts, and then the energy and the euphoria is there. It's so counterintuitive because we tend to want to resist the fear, but by leaning into it, that's what actually disarms it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is counterintuitive. That's why it's so hard.
James, are you still opening envelopes?
And I sort of leave that story open-ended, don't I, Paula? Intentionally. Intentionally, because that's what I do to work on that. No, I would say, well, let me say this. Anybody who's ever wrestled with OCD knows that it's a ebbing and flowing kind of thing. But I would say most of it through meditation. I've been able to overcome probably 80% of what were, I would consider, O and C type behaviors, or thoughts and behaviors, thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. It'll flare up if I'm not doing self-care, actually. If I get bad sleep is really the biggest trigger. But if I'm overdoing it and I'm not taking care of myself, not exercising, eating well, it's mostly sleep actually, and lose meditation. But like, yeah, no, meditation, but no, by and large, it feels, and I also should qualify that my experience of it was on the medium to manageable side, hideable side. It wasn't an extreme case of it, or a more intense case that you might see depicted in like movies and that sort of thing, which always I find dramatize it in ways that are not necessarily accurate to people's lived experience of it. And if anybody's interested in that topic specifically, there are great resources out there. OCD is a much more manageable and much better understood phenomenon than ever. In fact, I just finished a book for kids, helping kids with this, by Tamar Chansky. It's called Freeing Your Child from Obsessive Compulsive Disorder. Tamar Chansky is the author. So no, there's amazing resources. CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is usually the primary line of defense on this kind of stuff, but also mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, MBCT, but just meditation in general. There's different roads to tackling something like this, but getting better cognitive control and meditation being a royal road to that skill set does wonders for better understanding and being in control of your own mind.
I ask because I have some tendencies as well. Mine are, and like you said, they're very hideable, you know, the double checking of doors and things like that. Counting things, some things when I'm putting things away, having to count them. But I've also noticed that if I'm out of sync, you know, over anxious about something or overtired or something like that, they do tend to show up. But yeah, so I thought that was interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing with these kinds of things, and this is to be clear for everybody understanding, because most people very much misunderstand OCD. OCD is just anxiety driven. It's an anxiety based disorder. So what's the mechanism driving it is a system, is an error. Your brain's error detection center is essentially overactive. And so it's constantly telling you there's something wrong. And so it gets stuck in a gear and it needs to move on from that gear, but the emotion keeps telling you something's wrong. It's a very understandable problem, actually. But at issue, and what's hardest to get clear about in relation to the fear stuff is you have to not check the door twice in order for that impulse to check it twice to go away. In other words, the main behavioral flexing of that new muscle you're trying to build to overcome something specific like OCD is to feel that strong feeling, recognize it as, oh, that's, you can put a name to it, Mr. Perfection, or that's, you know, Charlie the Checker, or whatever. It's nice to sort of almost animate the problem, put a sort of personality to it. That's not me, that's the OCD, is another way of saying that. And then walk away from the impulse to do the thing and let the anxiety take that natural course that it takes and disappear, because it does go away on its own. And the key to convincing the brain that it will go away on its own is to not engage in the checking compulsion and see for itself. OCD is just a monster that the more you feed it, the hungrier it gets. That's the problem. And it's true with all anxiety, right? This is true with everything we just said. It's just a different flavor of everything we just talked about over the last hour and a half, which is to say, the more we avoid our fears, the bigger they get. It's the nature of anxiety. Other questions? That's a great question, Paula. Thank you for being honest and vulnerable. I appreciate that as well. Other questions?
Yeah, thank you, James. It's quite very informative webinar, and again, speaking the second language as an example. The younger generation is easier to learn, and but the older you get, the harder you learn or speak second language. Is there any something relation between the comfort zone or the you have created your own comfort zone, so it's getting harder to go outside of the comfort zone? That kind of thing is kind of, is it related to the courage versus something sticking to your comfort zone?
Specifically with as we age, we get better at staying within our comfort zone, and young people are a little better at getting out of their comfort zone. Is that, I mean, hearing that right?
Yeah.
Hideo?
Yes.
It's a really interesting question.
Sorry, it's a
No,
little bit different topic, but
no,
yeah.
no, not at all. It's I think it's very pertinent to the topic. I think young people are better at getting out of their comfort zone because they haven't established the cognitive frameworks, the schemas, the mental models for how the world works in order to even be uncomfortable. So there's a setting up of how the world works that helps us as adults run our lives on autopilot. And the only time we tend to pay attention is when something breaks the expectation of the way things are supposed to go. Kids, and especially young kids, I have a 2-year-old, don't have a way things are supposed to go yet. With some exceptions, like nap times. And, my little guy has, we're pretty rhythmic with the way our lives are built, and that's good. Kids need that structure. But my 2-year-old, I mean, you should see him right now outside, like, because spring's happening, ants. I mean, he cannot believe how many ants there are. He thinks those things are the greatest thing. I mean, he literally, every time he sees them, he'll follow it for like 30 minutes. Because it's just like, he wants to, like, he doesn't know what to do. He can't believe his eyes. And me, I'm like, yeah, it's an ant. Right? We're bored in a sense because it's not exciting. It's not wonderful, wonder-full. It's not all those things because I have a working knowledge that, oh, that's not dangerous. I know what that is. It just crawls around and maybe annoys me when it gets into my brown sugar bag in the cupboard. like I know what ants are and what they do. He doesn't, so everything's amazing to him. So yeah, are they? I have to think about this one, Hideo, because the question that naturally comes up, he's constantly in a growth mode because of his discomfort. But pairing up right with the discomfort, and we haven't talked about this yet, and I actually talked about this with the group last time we met, is the experience of flow. So one of the hidden gems of discomfort is typically when we get uncomfortable in the spirit or in the service of growth, and when attention is part of that equation, when we're really locked into something, like him on the ant, or me in a good book that's interesting to me, or whatever, the state shifts from discomfort to flow. Which is why it's so rewarding for young people and kids, because they're almost always in a state of flow because everything is novel to them. And adults have to work pretty hard to get into flow because everything is boring to them. So I know I'm bringing in a little bit more than is part of the scope of the discussion today, but that's because the question's so interesting. Part of this, I think the ultimate skill here is to marry discomfort with fun. It's like being fun comfortable. because your brain's going to resist being uncomfortable because negative emotions are aversive naturally. So you do want to ultimately, in the end, combine it with something enjoyable. It's like me doing the dishes. I hate doing the dishes, but I'm the dish guy. So what do I do to make that experience more pleasurable? I call a friend or a family member while doing the dishes. I combine an uncomfortable thing, a discomfort thing, with a fun thing, socializing. Now, it's not scary to do the dishes, but the same principle, I think, does apply. But yeah, no, I need to sit back on that one. He did. That's a really good question. It's a really good question.
Very much.
All right. I just want to share this with the group because this is the last time, I think, from this neuroscience series we've been doing. Am I remembering that right? This is the third time we've met over the course of the spring. And I know Paul has already taken my course, but to anybody who watching, this was actually from a few times ago, but if you, there's a mini habits sort of habitizing kind of skill set here that we're talking about. If anybody wants that, texting the word habit to the number 44144 should spit you back a PDF of that. But the more interesting thing that I was going to share is that the course where a lot of this comes together in the ways that Hideo is bringing out, meaning there's a lot of insight when you put these things together and try to understand them on what the brain is doing, is the Brain Science for Coaches course, which I offer every 8 weeks. The next round of that starts this Thursday, May 19th. So a third of or fourth of that is on habits, fourth of that is on productivity and brain breaks and some of the stuff that help us rejuvenate and restore. Fearlessness. So a quarter of the course is on everything we were just talking about today, on anxiety and stress and fear. And then a quarter is on happiness. So all the positive psychology stuff, really understanding the nature of happiness and flourishing. Again, that starts this Thursday for anybody who's interested. It's 30 continuing credit hours from ICF. So it does give you quite a bit of CE credit. There's tons of resources, lots of things to work through with clients, exercises and all that kind of stuff. So it's very practical, very hands-on, very tangible, very easy to use. It's sort of like applying the science in your practice is one way to think of it. And then, as you can see, it's very robust. And then every 8 weeks, or sorry, every week for all of those 8 weeks, we meet live and have a deep dive on everything that's being learned. So this is when everybody brings essentially concrete examples of things they're working on or working on with the client, and we really workshop together what it is, how the science could apply in that area, and how they could utilize everything, for example, that we're talking about today. All right, just want to make sure everybody has the discount code for that course that starts on Thursday is just Texas. No surprises there. But if anybody's interested in that, feel free to let me know. The URL on that as well, I'll put that in the chat, is coaches.brainbydesign.com.
Well, thank you, James, for such a rich presentation, much to simmer on, to stretch with, and be able to grow ourselves as coaches, as well as apply these tools with our clients. And we certainly will be sharing this recording out through our channels so that other people can benefit, as well as know how to do the deeper dive with you. Your content is so robust. It really is great to have all of the researched back tools, but to see how it aligns with the competencies of coaching so much. The word awareness was just coming to mind as you were talking, that these tools help create awareness of what those internal narratives are, so then we can begin shifting in other directions. So thank you so much just for your energy and all that you bring to the conversation.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, no, and if anybody's watching the recording, we'll do the next round of this course after the one that starts this Thursday is July 14th. So yeah, it's a brain science for coaches. It's a sort of whenever it's best for you. We'd love to have you.
And we can all get signed up for the text to have those resources as well.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all. Have a fabulous International Coaching Week, and we're looking forward to what's ahead. Wednesday will be the conversation with ICF CEO Magda Mook, along with the president of the Association of Change Management Professionals. And they're going to be talking about the intersection of coaching and change management, and specifically, what are the key times that coaches can be involved in that process. So looking forward to an international event on Wednesday, and then we'll be in person in San Antonio on Thursday for our ICW social event. So would love to see you there. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Good to see you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.